I moved into the house at the end of October. The timing wasn't intentional, but it felt appropriate later, once everything started happening. Autumn had already drained most of the warmth from the town. Trees stood bare, their branches scratching against one another whenever the wind picked up. By the time I signed the lease, the days were shorter, and the nights felt heavier, as if darkness arrived with purpose instead of by accident. The house itself was small, one story, narrow, old. It sat on a quiet street where most of the neighbors were retired or rarely home. During the day, it looked ordinary, almost forgettable. Beige siding, a modest porch, windows that reflected the sky without revealing much of what was inside. But at night, the house felt different. The first thing I noticed was the sound. Every step echoed. The hardwood floors creaked even when I stood still, as if the house shifted its weight when it realized someone was inside. The hallway was long and tight, stretching from the living room to the bedrooms like a throat. My roommate Mark and I had moved in together to save money. We worked opposite schedules, so we rarely saw each other during the week. He worked early mornings, I worked late evenings. Most nights one of us was asleep while the other quietly came and went. That weekend Mark left to visit his parents. "Back Sunday night," he said, tossing a bag over his shoulder. "Try not to burn the place down." I laughed and told him to drive safe. The door closed behind him, and the house settled into silence. That was the first night I realized how alone the place really felt. By 10 p.m., I was in the living room, lights on, television playing something I wasn't really watching. The noise was comforting, familiar. It kept my thoughts from wandering too far. Around 11, I decided to head to bed. I turned off the TV. The sudden quiet felt loud. I stood for a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of a car passing somewhere far away. I turned off the living room light and walked toward the hallway. That's when I saw it. The bathroom light was on. A soft yellow glow spilled out from beneath the door, stretching across the floor like it was reaching for something. I stopped at the edge of the hallway, confused. I was almost certain I had turned it off earlier. I remembered standing at the sink, brushing my teeth, flipping the switch down with my elbow before leaving. The memory felt solid, real. Still, I shrugged it off. People forget things. Lights get left on. Old houses have faulty wiring. I walked over, opened the bathroom door, and flipped the switch off. The light vanished instantly, leaving me standing in the dark hallway. I closed the door, went into my bedroom, and locked it behind me out of habit more than fear. At least that's what I told myself. I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, the room illuminated by the pale glow of the screen. The house felt quiet again. Normal. Then I heard it. A click. It was subtle. So subtle that if I hadn't been paying attention, I might have missed it entirely. It sounded like a switch being flipped. I froze. I stared at the ceiling, listening. Nothing else followed. No footsteps, no creaking floorboards, just silence. I sat up slowly and glanced at the crack beneath my bedroom door. Light was spilling through. My heart rate picked up immediately. I swung my legs off the bed and walked toward the door, every step careful, deliberate. I opened it just enough to look into the hallway. The bathroom light was on again, brighter than before. I stood there for several seconds, staring at it, waiting for my brain to offer a reasonable explanation. Sleepwalking, faulty wiring, a trick of my memory. I walked back into the hallway, turned the light off again, and this time, I checked everything. The bathroom window was locked. The mirror showed nothing unusual. The closet door across the hall was closed. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. Nothing. I went back to bed. 10 minutes later, it happened again. Click. This time I didn't move right away. I stared at the ceiling, my phone clenched tightly in my hand. My breathing felt too loud in my ears. I waited, hoping the sound had been something else. Anything else. I slowly turned my head toward the door. The light was back. At that moment, something shifted inside me. The calm excuses I had been making dissolved, replaced by a tight, cold feeling in my chest. I got out of bed and opened the door fully. The bathroom light was on just as before. But this time I didn't walk toward it. Instead, I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, staring down the hallway, letting the silence stretch. 30 seconds passed. Then, without warning, the bathroom switch flipped upward on its own. I saw it happen. The switch moved, smoothly, deliberately. No flicker, no delay, just motion. My mind went blank. For a moment, I felt detached from my body, like I was watching the scene from somewhere just behind my eyes. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I couldn't. That was when I heard the breathing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. It came from directly behind me. Slow, controlled, careful. Whoever or whatever it was didn't want to be noticed. The sound came from the hallway closet. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to confirm what my mind was already imagining. I didn't want to give it the satisfaction of being seen. I took one step backward, then another. The breathing continued. I reached the front door, unlocked it with shaking hands, and stepped outside barefoot, wearing nothing but a t-shirt and sweatpants. The cold air hit me like a slap. I stood on the porch, heart pounding, staring at the closed door behind me, half expecting it to open on its own. It didn't. I stayed there until morning. Cars passed occasionally. The sky slowly shifted from black to gray. I didn't go back inside, not even when my phone buzzed with a text from Mark asking how my night was. When he returned later that day, I told him everything. We searched the house together. Every room, every closet, the attic, the crawl space. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no open windows, no explanation. "That's creepy," he said, trying to laugh it off. "Old houses, man." But his voice didn't sound convinced. Before we left to grab coffee, I glanced back down the hallway. The bathroom light was on. I moved out 2 weeks later. Mark stayed. He told me later that the lights still turn on sometimes, but only when he's alone. I've lived alone for most of my adult life, not because I dislike people, but because silence feels safer to me. Predictable. When you live alone long enough, you begin to recognize the sounds your home makes. The way the air conditioner hums when it kicks on, the gentle pop of pipes cooling after a shower, the soft tick of the clock on the wall. Those sounds become familiar, comforting. That's how you know when something doesn't belong. I had been living in my townhouse for just over a year when it happened. It was a narrow two-story place, one of many identical units lined up along a quiet suburban street. During the day, the neighborhood felt almost empty. Most people work long hours. Some traveled frequently. At night, the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and the townhouses sat quietly, like they were holding their breath. My unit was an end unit. Only one shared wall. That detail will matter later. That night started like any other. I finished dinner around 9, cleaned up the kitchen, and went upstairs to my bedroom. I had work early the next morning, so I didn't stay up late. By 10:30, I was already in bed, lights off, scrolling through my phone. The house was silent. too silent. I remember thinking that the quiet felt heavier than usual, like the air itself had thickened. I dismissed the thought and rolled onto my side, letting my mind wander as I stared at the faint glow of my screen. That's when I heard it. 3 knocks. Soft, slow, knock, knock, knock. I sat up immediately. At first, I assumed it was my front door. The sound carried upwards strangely in the townhouse, especially at night when everything else was still. I checked the time, 2:07 a.m. No one ever knocked on my door at that hour. I listened carefully. Nothing followed. I reached for my phone and opened the app connected to my door camera. No notifications, no motion alerts. The live feed showed my front porch empty and undisturbed. I frowned. Then I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. This time, it was unmistakably closer. The sound came from inside the house, specifically my bedroom door. My heart began to race. I hadn't moved since the first knock. I hadn't gotten out of bed. I hadn't made a sound. And I was alone. I held my breath, listening. The house remained perfectly still. I whispered, barely louder than the sound of my own breathing. "Hello?" No answer. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the knocking came again. Slower this time. Deliberate. Like whoever or whatever was on the other side wanted to make sure I understood it was intentional. Knock. 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 I stared at the door, my eyes fixed on the handle. It didn't move. There was no rattling, no attempt to open it, just the knocking. My phone felt slippery in my hands as I typed a message to my older brother. "Are you awake? Something weird is happening." The message sent, but he didn't respond right away. I stayed perfectly still, afraid that even shifting my weight might somehow invite whatever was outside the door to come closer. Minutes passed. The knocking stopped. I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in my chest ease just a little. I told myself it must have been something else. Pipes, the house settling, a neighbor closing a door. Even though I knew that explanation didn't make sense, I lay back down, keeping my eyes on the door. That's when I heard the next sound. A creak. It was faint but unmistakable. The sound of a door opening. Not my bedroom door, my closet. The closet was built into the wall across from my bed. Its sliding doors were old and heavy, made of solid wood that didn't move easily. I watched as one of the doors began to slide open, slowly, inch by inch. No hand appeared, no shadow crossed the gap, just the door moving on its own. It stopped when it was open just enough to reveal darkness inside. Nothing came out, no footsteps, no breathing, no sound at all. I couldn't move. My body felt locked in place, like my brain had cut power to everything except my eyes. I stared at the opening, waiting for something, anything to happen. Nothing did. After what felt like an eternity, the closet door slid shut again, smoothly, silently. My phone buzzed in my hand, a message from my brother. "What's going on?" I typed back immediately, my fingers shaking. "Someone is knocking on my bedroom door." From inside the house, the typing bubble appeared almost instantly. "I'm coming over. Don't open the door for anyone." I didn't respond. I didn't know what else to say. I stayed in bed staring at the door until I heard his car pull into the driveway 15 minutes later. When he knocked on the front door, the sound nearly made me jump out of my skin. I rushed downstairs and opened it without hesitation. The relief I felt when I saw him standing there was overwhelming. We searched the house together. Every room, every closet, every cabinet. We checked the locks. All secured. The windows, all closed. The attic access, untouched. Nothing was out of place. Maybe someone knocked on the wrong door, he said, though his tone lacked confidence. Sound carries weird in these places. I nodded even though I didn't believe it. Before he left, he hugged me tightly. Call me if anything else happens, he said. I promised I would. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me flinch. Every creak of the house felt like a warning. When morning finally came, I felt drained, like I hadn't slept at all. The next few nights were quiet. No knocking, no moving doors. I started to relax again, until the fourth night. I was lying in bed, lights off, staring at the ceiling when I heard it. 3 knocks. This time they came from inside the wall, not the door. The wall, directly behind my headboard. Knock, knock, knock. I shot upright, my heart pounding. I pressed my ear against the wall, listening. Nothing. Then a voice whispered, so softly I almost missed it. Let me in. It sounded close. Too close. I grabbed my phone and ran downstairs, not stopping until I was outside, standing barefoot on the cold pavement. I didn't go back inside that night. I moved out 2 weeks later. I never told the landlord why. Before I left, I asked one of my neighbors if they'd ever experienced anything strange in their unit. She hesitated. Then she said, "You were in the end unit, right?" I nodded. She looked away and said quietly, "That one's always been empty the longest." I asked her why. She didn't answer. I didn't notice it right away. That's the part that still bothers me the most. When you're alone often enough, silence becomes familiar. You stop hearing it as emptiness and start recognizing it as a background, like static that never fully goes away. Every house has its own version of that sound. A refrigerator cycling on and off, pipes expanding, the faint electrical hum behind the walls. I lived alone in a small apartment above a closed bookstore. The building was old but sturdy, brick exterior, thick walls. The kind of place where noise didn't travel easily. That was why I chose it. I worked nights, mostly from home, editing audio files and transcripts. My schedule was irregular, which meant my sense of time already felt loose. Days blurred together. Nights stretched longer than they should have. Most evenings followed the same pattern. I'd make tea around midnight, sit at my desk, work until my eyes felt dry. Then I'd shut everything down and lie in bed, letting the quiet settle around me. That night was no different. At least it didn't feel different at first. It started with a sound I couldn't place. Not loud, not sudden, just wrong. It came from somewhere behind the wall near my bedroom. A soft, rhythmic noise, almost like someone gently tapping their fingernail against wood. Tap, pause, tap. I stopped typing and listened. It didn't sound mechanical, too uneven, too deliberate. I checked the time. 1:18 a.m. The building was empty at night. The bookstore below had been closed for years. No neighbors on either side. I was the only tenant. I told myself it was the building settling. Old structures make strange sounds. Still I waited. Tap, pause, tap. It wasn't constant. That was what made it unsettling. The sound seemed to stop whenever I focused on it, only to resume once I relaxed again. I stood up and pressed my ear against the wall. Nothing. The sound stopped entirely. I stepped back, uneasy but unconvinced anything was truly wrong. I returned to my desk, opened my laptop, tried to focus. 5 minutes passed. Then it started again, this time closer, not louder but clearer. The tapping had changed. It wasn't against the wall anymore. It sounded like it was coming from inside the room. I scanned the bedroom slowly. Nothing had moved. The window was closed, curtains still. The air felt heavy, like before a storm, though the night outside was calm. The sound came again. Tap, pause, tap. My eyes settled on the floor near the foot of my bed. The sound was coming from there, specifically beneath the floorboards. I crouched down, placing my hand flat against the wood. The vibration was faint, but real. Someone or something was tapping from below. That made no sense. There was nothing beneath my apartment except the sealed bookstore. No basement access, no crawl space. I had been told that when I moved in. The tapping stopped the moment my hand touched the floor. I pulled away quickly, heart racing. The silence afterward felt intentional, like whatever had been making the sound was aware it had been noticed. I backed away slowly and sat on the edge of the bed. I told myself I was tired, that my brain was filling in gaps, that isolation does strange thing to perception. Then the tapping returned, faster this time. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap. Not random, structured, almost like a pattern. I whispered, "Hello?" The sound stopped immediately. The quiet that followed was deeper than before, heavier, pressing against my ears until I became painfully aware of my own breathing. Then something happened that I still struggle to explain. The tapping resumed, but now it matched my breathing. When I inhaled, tap. When I exhaled, tap. Perfectly timed. I held my breath. The tapping stopped. I exhaled slowly. Tap. My chest tightened. Whatever was beneath the floor wasn't just making noise. It was listening. I grabbed my phone and stepped into the hallway, calling my sister as calmly as I could manage. She answered on the second ring. I told her I thought someone was in the building. She asked if I'd called the police. I told her I wasn't sure what to say to them. While she spoke, trying to reassure me, I noticed something else. The tapping wasn't coming from beneath the floor anymore. It was coming from the ceiling above the hallway, following me. I froze. My sister kept talking, but I could barely hear her. Tap, pause, tap, directly above my head. I moved one step to the side. The tapping moved with me, one step back. It followed, always above me, always just out of sight. I whispered into the phone, "It's moving?" She asked what I meant. Before I could answer, the tapping changed again. It slowed. Tap, tap, tap. 3 times. Then a long pause. Then 3 more. Like a signal. I ended the call without saying goodbye and went back into the bedroom, closing the door behind me. The tapping stopped. For several seconds, nothing happened. I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. Then I heard something far worse, a soft knock. Not from the door, from inside the floor, directly beneath where I was standing. The knock wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. One knock, then another, slow, careful, as if testing whether I was still there. I stepped backward. The knocking followed, always directly beneath me. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I stood there trembling, realizing something horrible. Whatever it was, it didn't need to see me. It knew exactly where I was. The knocking stopped. Then a whisper came from beneath the floor. Not words, just breath, exhaled upward through the wood. I left that night. I didn't pack. I didn't lock the door. I slept in my car until sunrise. Later, when I returned with the landlord and a maintenance worker, they found nothing. No access panels, no hollow spaces, no explanation. The building was solid, too solid. I moved out the same week. Months later, I drove past the building out of curiosity. The bookstore below was being renovated. Workers had torn up part of the floor. One of them was standing in the opening, staring down into the darkness beneath. When I asked what was wrong, he said quietly, "There's no space under here." Then he looked at me and added, "There shouldn't be any sound at all." I don't usually answer unknown numbers. Most people don't anymore. Robocalls, spam, telemarketers pretending to sound human. It's all noise, background clutter, something you ignore without thinking. That night, I wasn't expecting a call from anyone. It was a Tuesday, late winter. I was home alone, sitting on the couch with the lights low, letting some mindless show play in the background. I wasn't watching it. I just needed the sound. Outside, the street was quiet. Too quiet in that way neighborhoods get after 10, when everyone's settled in and the world feels paused. My phone was on the coffee table, face up, silent until it wasn't. The screen lit up suddenly, making me flinch. No vibration, no ringtone, just light. An incoming call. I leaned forward to look. Unknown caller. No number, no location. I almost let it ring out. I should have. But something about the timing felt strange. Not urgent, just precise. Like the call had waited for the exact moment my attention wasn't fully occupied. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. "Hello?" For a second there was nothing. Then I heard breathing. Not distorted, not crackling. Clear, steady. Someone was on the line. "Can you hear me?" a voice asked. Male, calm, neutral accent. "Yes," I said. "Who is this?" Another pause. "I just wanted to make sure you were alone." The words landed heavier than they should have. "I think you have the wrong number," I replied, already pulling the phone away from my ear. "No," he said quickly. "I don't." My stomach tightened. "I'm busy," I said. "Don't call again." I hung up. The screen went dark. The room felt quieter without the TV sound, which I realized had stopped playing at some point. I didn't remember turning it off. I sat there for a moment, listening to my own breathing, trying to shake the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. Then my phone lit up again. Same screen, unknown caller. I didn't answer this time. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. It stopped after the fourth ring. I exhaled, relief mixing with embarrassment. I told myself it was just a prank call. Someone bored. Someone guessing. Still, I locked my phone and set it face down. 5 seconds later, it rang again. This time I answered without thinking. "What do you want?" I snapped. The same voice responded, calm as before. "You turned the TV off." I froze. "I didn't," I said slowly. "You did," he replied. "Right after I called." "That's not funny." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm not laughing." I stood up, scanning the room. Everything looked the same. "You're guessing," I said. "Anyone could—" "You're sitting on the left side of the couch," he interrupted. "Your phone charger is tangled on the floor near the table. And there's a light on in the kitchen you forgot to turn off." My throat went dry. I hadn't moved since the call started. I hadn't mentioned any of that. I walked slowly toward the kitchen. The light was on. My heart began to pound. "How can you see me?" I asked. "I can't," he said. "Not exactly." "Then how do you know?" Another pause. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "Because you sound different when you're alone." I hung up immediately. My hands were shaking now. I locked the phone, turned it off completely, and set it down. For a long moment, nothing happened. I stood in the middle of the room listening. Then the phone vibrated, even though it was off. I stared at it. The screen remained black. The vibration stopped, then started again. Longer this time. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The screen turned on by itself. Same call, unknown caller. I backed away. The call answered on its own. You shouldn't have done that, the voice said. Done what? I whispered. Turned it off, he replied. That makes it harder for me to help you. Help me with what? With being alone, he said. I felt something shift inside my chest. What do you mean? I asked. You haven't been alone all night, he said gently. I just wanted you to know. I felt dizzy. Where are you? I asked. In between, he said. Where sound goes when no one else is listening. The call ended. I didn't stay in the apartment. I grabbed my keys and jacket and left without turning any lights off. I drove around for hours until my hands stopped shaking. When I finally returned just before sunrise, everything looked normal. Too normal. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no call history, no record of anything. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. Until my phone buzzed with a text message from an unsaved number. You don't sound alone anymore. I blocked the number, changed my phone, changed my provider, moved apartments a month later. I never got another call, but sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet and I'm sitting alone, my phone lights up. No notification, no sound, just light. And then it goes dark again. I've learned something since then. There's a difference between being alone and sounding alone. And whatever called me that night, it wasn't listening to my phone. It was listening to the silence around me.